Hey friends, welcome to the Taste Toast Travel Podcast. We're your hosts and resident foodies, Epicureans, and lovers of all things travel and exploration.
I'm John, and I'm a certified somm and a certified specialist of wine, and I've worked in the wine and hospitality industry for over 10 years.
I'm Tara, and I've worked in the wine industry for over 7 years, both in hospitality and digital marketing.
When my wife and I first met, we bonded over our love of eating, drinking, and traveling the world. That passion has only grown over time. Now we want to share this passion with you from an insider perspective. We're only scratching the surface here, and we have a lot more in store that we can't wait to share with you all. Grab your favorite beverage, get comfortable, and enjoy the journey with us. Cheers.
Hey guys, welcome back to Taste Toast Travel. I'm Tara.
John.
You're just like experimenting with new intros.
Finding
every time.
myself.
You're finding your voice. Anyway, welcome back. I personally am very excited to get into this episode today because I think we have a lot to say on some of these things. And
I sure do.
Yeah, you sure do. And I will say, I think it's actually this topic specifically that prompted conversations about starting this podcast. Because we were like,
I would say so.
we have something to talk about here. This is
People need to know.
People need to know this. Yeah, we feel very, very strongly about what we're talking about today. So with that being said, we are talking about wine tasting do's and don'ts. And I mean, as I
There's many parts. There's a saga. Like Star Wars.
It really is a saga. But I will say, I mean, this is like wine tasting for sure. But I would also say, keep these things in mind for any hospitality function, right? Restaurant in some cases,
just being a decent human.
Right. I actually really cannot believe we even have to have an episode like this, to be honest. The fact that we even have to say some of these things is actually highly unfortunate.
People suck.
You would know. Not to put too fine a point on it, but yeah, kind of. So we have a few main things, topics, angles of this that we'll be chatting about today. More to come though. So I'll kind of just bring some things up, I think, and then I'll kick it to you because for preface this, and for anybody who maybe is not aware of this or is just now tuning in or hasn't heard this in a previous episode, we both have not only wine industry experience, but hospitality experience, I would say. But I think yours, let's say, is more recent. So, and he has been in it for longer. So yeah, I'll kick a lot of this over to you. But yeah, we've both been through the ringer on pretty much everything we're going to talk about today and more. So let's get into it. So first thing here, if you are going wine tasting, and I don't care where you are, right? We're in California, but this is, again, just basic respect, human stuff. Making a reservation. So let's start there. Why would you say that's important?
Well, most wineries require reservations now.
Depending where you are. I mean, again, our mind here is Napa Sonoma, right? Which I think is one of the biggest.
All right. So Napa Sonoma, definitely at reservation. Other parts of the state, Paso, Temecula, you can probably just show up and they'll bow down to you because you came into their winery in Temecula.
I would say,
oh my God, thank you.
I would almost say any other state, really. I mean, I don't want to speak for any other state.
I'm not gonna.
This is very generalized, you guys.
Yeah, it's just we're talking basically California, Washington, Oregon.
Yeah,
those are the big three, really.
Yeah.
But if you're going to come to Napa and Sonoma for wine tasting, you should be making reservations.
For the love of God, make a freaking reservation.
Because there's really not much availability. It's very busy here. People like to come and drink wine, so it's full a lot. So please make a reservation. And if you start looking pretty far in advance for some places too. I mean, it's not you don't make a reservation a day before. They'll be what are you talking about? Saturday has been booked for 17 weeks. What's your deal? Plan ahead.
Yeah.
And I know that's difficult to do for some folks, like me. I don't plan.
No, who do you think
I
plans
don't
in
plan
this
ahead.
marriage? Okay, it's
Um,
me.
I show up when I'm told, usually 2 minutes after when I should have been there.
Which
And
is interesting because that's another point we'll be touching on today, but I digress.
there's just in life in general. Say, be there at 9. Well, fine, I'll be there at 9:01.
It's just how we operate.
That's how I do it. Sorry. But if you're gonna come wine tasting to Napa and Sonoma, look ahead, book reservations, talk to your concierge if you're staying at a hotel, tell them to set you up tastings places.
Yeah, can I sidebar? Take advantage of that. If you happen to be staying at a place that has a concierge, not every place is going to, or if you, whatever, but they are there for a reason. And oftentimes, like, they could get you a really good deal somewhere, or they might get you in somewhere that's a little more off the beaten path or something cool. You know, like so many wineries purposefully have relationships with hotels. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, and if anything, call the winery and say, do you guys ask them if they accept walk-ins? And most of the time they'll say no. But if they do, then yeah, for sure, just walk in. But like most wineries are appointment only because of COVID. Everyone kind of went that way. And so then now most all wineries in Napa and Sonoma area are appointment only now.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that really quick because 100% there are wineries, even if they, like, let's say there are wineries out there that are not reservation only, right? Or there may be both. That's just like, like you see this all the time. Reservation, like recommended, but walk-ins welcome. And they probably truly mean, I'm not trying to, like, again, I don't want to generalize here, and I don't want to
It depends on
deter you from walking in. Like, some places legitimately are okay with that. But let's get into this a little bit because I feel like this is sort of the crux of why we're bringing up this point. It is more also just out of like courtesy and planning for that winery and for that team, that so they can like rely on, like, okay, I know who's coming in today, or
yeah. But I mean, also,
you know,
like, you know, I work at a winery that is 100% appointment only. Like,
yeah.
If you don't have an appointment, like,
Yeah, you're not coming in.
don't even try. And so a lot of wineries are like that. Some are not. I mean, really, it depends on the experience you want. If you just want a winery that you can just roll into, slug some wine, and then
And
go
bounce,
on to another
like,
place,
yeah.
there are places like that you
Yeah.
could do that. It's just not an experience. If you're booking an experience or you're looking for an experience, you have to make a reservation.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point too. I mean, if you, unfortunately, and this is actually one of the things we are going to bring up, if not in this episode, in another one, when you come here, I really hope and encourage, like, anyone listening, or if anyone here is like considering coming to Napa or Sonoma specifically, or really anywhere that you're going, enjoy it. Like, that is like the whole point also, I feel like, of this podcast and stuff, of like taking time to just slow down and savor and be intentional with what you are experiencing and tasting and drinking and all the things. And yeah, we just have seen many groups and people over the years that come and just, like you said, just kind of like, you know, throw the wine back and they're on to the next one. And it's like, what did you really get out of that? And I understand why people want to go to so many places. There are so many incredible wineries out there, and whether they're Insta-worthy or not. So I get why people want to like get the most like bang for their buck, so to speak, when they come out here.
On that point, or that note, like, people try and go to too many wineries.
Well, that's another point for another day. Let's not even go down that rabbit. Well, unless you want to go down that rabbit.
I want to go down it.
Okay, go down.
2 wineries a day max. Don't go to any more than 2. 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. Don't do 3.
I was gonna
Don't
say
do
3
4.
max.
Don't do 3.
I mean, listen, I agree with you. I 1000% am with you. 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but so many people don't factor in also having to like eat.
Wineries don't have restaurants.
Lunch,
You can't
like,
have a restaurant at a winery here. So like, you're not gonna get lunch at a winery unless it's like a private event. So you're gonna have to pencil in time to like have a proper lunch at a restaurant, and that's usually around lunchtime, when the second tasting would be, if you're going to do 3. So you do 1 in the morning, and then you would, you know, ideally you do it at like 10 a.m. You're done by like, you know, lunchtime. You have lunch, and then you have another tasting at like 2:30 or 3 o'clock.
It's perfectly spaced.
Yeah. Like,
You don't feel rushed.
yeah.
You're you're not going to feel the effects of the alcohol as much. I understand people want to feel the effects of alcohol probably. And this is a whole nother thing on not over drinking. That truly is another topic for another day. But we see that too.
Yeah,
and it's
I get it.
Not
you're
cute.
Coming here from across the country. You're like, we want to go to all these wineries. You're spending all this time here. Like,
all this money. We get it.
Don't do that. Don't. Just do 2 a day. You can always come back in the future. There's so many wineries. 1 in the morning, lunch. 1 in the afternoon, dinner. You'll be in bed by 9 o'clock anyway because you're going to be drunk.
And there's also not a lot to do here after like 10 o'clock. Places closed.
Yeah.
Like there's a couple of places that are open on the later side.
Yeah,
but
everyone's asleep by like 10, 9:30, 10 o'clock because you've been drinking all day. Like, people don't like connect in their mind wine tasting with consuming alcohol. Like, you're like, oh, I'm just tasting.
That's an important point.
You have 5 wines at a winery. That equals like 3 glasses of wine. 2,
depending how heavy-handed
like
some of the hosts are too, which they shouldn't be, but they are.
Let's say you have 5 wines and they're each 1.5 ounces. I mean, that's well over a glass of wine. And then you go to and then you have other wines, and then you go to another plate. Like, by the end of like one wine tasting, you've probably had 2 glasses of wine, and then you go on to another winery and you have like 3 more glasses of wine, but they're in such small portions that you're like, oh, it's
it
just
catches
wine
up with
tasting.
you. You don't notice.
And then after you've had 2 wine tastings, you've already consumed like 7 glasses of wine, 8 glasses of wine, and it's like you still have another place to go. Like, there's a third now,
or a fourth, or
like some
whatever.
people, like it ends up being a lot of wine, and it's not good.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just
not fun.
That's the thing. It's like, and to
you
kind
end
of
up wasting your money.
A little bit.
You're so intoxicated that you don't even get to enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. So bringing it back to the appointment thing, because there's really a lot more about that I want to say, but for the sake of time, I think the beauty of being intentional with where you go, making that reservation, and you mentioned, you could always come back. Like, some people, I understand it, you guys, like, if this is like kind of a once in a lifetime trip for some people, I think we're kind of jaded living here.
I get it.
Some people, you can't come back. I understand that. Or you can't afford to come back because it's too expensive. I hear you. I think that's where you just have to be really discerning and just smart with your time. And again, it's quality over quantity. I think that's like,
yeah, you want to
that's my point.
Have a relaxing experience, taste your wine, enjoy the experience.
Just really enjoy.
You don't want to have to
where
be
you
like
are.
Looking at your clock and rushing to the next place, because if you're late to one, you're going to be late to the rest.
That's another huge aspect of this, and I understand why some people that's actually maybe why they don't want to make a reservation. So I want to acknowledge that, and they're like, I don't want to be tied down to like being somewhere at something. I totally get that. So it's kind of twofold, right? I think where we're like, make a reservation, is it benefits both parties. And of course, we're kind of standing up for like the people that are, working at the tasting room and being like, it's a nice courtesy for them. But really, it benefits you too. Like, it just...
Yeah, I mean, you're guaranteed a wine tasting.
Yeah, and a more thoughtful one. It's going to be less rush. It's going to be more around what you're interested in, because you never know, depending on the winery too, like especially if it's a special occasion, right? Or if it's a birthday or an anniversary or something, like, you never know, like, they could pull out the stops for you, or they could pour you some, like, a special splash or two of something, or, they just make it a little bit more personalized to you. And like, if you're going to come out here, or if you're making a weekend of being here or whatever, like, why not take that extra time and like really, again, just sit and enjoy where you are and really take it all in, and get a more like personalized thing out of it.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah, you'll have a way better time if you make reservations. You only go to like a couple wineries a day. Like, you'll just have a better time with your timing, with
you're just not going to be stressed.
You'll have more relaxing time.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
One thing I want to jump in and say here that I think is important, and honestly, this could be its own topic too, but please keep in mind, especially, I don't want to speak for like any other wine regions right now. I'm just talking Napa and Sonoma. Keep in mind where you are and where the wineries are. So if you are making appointments, or if you're, basically this has happened to me and I'm sure this has happened to you. So I was working at a place in, it's called Carnero. So it's like the Napa Sonoma border. And they were like, oh yeah, our next tasting is, it was not that far away. They thought Sonoma, as in like Sonoma Valley, they thought it was really close. It literally was, I can't even remember where they were going, but it was like,
It's probably like Healdsburg.
north. Yes, it was like
Like an hour
Healdsburg. So
away.
by the way, for those who don't know geographically what we're talking about, that it was like well over an hour away. And they were like, oh my God, are you serious? Like, we thought it was like Sonoma. So people don't
Yeah, look at a map.
just please, for the love of God, look at a map. And
It requires planning coming here.
it does. It's
not really
amazing
a
how many
off-the-cuff
people.
place. Like,
Yeah.
plan. Like, you're gonna need to look at the tastings, the timing, when it's gonna start, when it's gonna finish, where your next appointment is, how long it's gonna take to get that to that appointment.
If you are taking a Lyft or an Uber,
Oh, God.
account for the fact of
That they're-
where you are. Like, we have both, and you especially have worked in places that are a little bit more remote. It might take them longer to get out there.
Lyft
or
and Uber are notoriously unreliable in this.
it
area.
depends where you are. I think like downtown and stuff, Sonoma
Yeah,
and
I'm
Napa
talking
are
going
easier.
to
But
wineries.
like,
If you're like up Valley in Napa, like you're gonna be waiting for, it could be 30 minutes
yeah,
for an Uber.
and keep in mind
Like,
traffic too. I mean,
they're
we
just not reliable.
we just see this all the time, you guys, and it's making, and with this reservation thing, that goes for dinner as well, because like, again, Napa especially, and downtown Sonoma can get very, very busy. And a lot of like the good places, there are actually some places in Napa that we love that actually don't take reservations, so you kind of just have to like, you just got to go and try it. But I understand where you might kind of feel more up against the clock if you have a reservation, but honestly, I think restaurants, wineries, wherever you're going will appreciate it more times than not. You're going to get a better experience out of it. And
Well, I mean, just based
Yeah,
off
just-
the fact that like most wineries you can't even come into unless you have a reservation.
that is more of a thing now too. Yeah. I mean, there are places that say walk-ins welcome. And if they're advertising it, I'm sure they mean that. But I think we can both speak on like, from the insider perspective, they're always going to appreciate those reservations.
Yeah.
And just being able to like plan ahead a little bit better for you. And at the end of the day, you reap the benefits of that too. You know?
So true.
All right. Anything else on this before we
On reservations,
just making reservations
Oh, no.
versus
do it.
not? Okay. Next one. This is actually kind of tied into this topic. Showing up really early or really late for your reservation. You have very strong opinions about this.
Yeah. So
Where to start?
we can start with early. So wineries are not restaurants.
He's choosing his words so carefully, you guys.
So basically, you have let's say you make an appointment and it's a 10 a.m. tasting. You're from the East Coast. Love the East Coast. But you're up
people.
at 5 a.m. because of the time difference.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, I have nothing to do and I'm just up, and like Starbucks hasn't even opened yet, and like you're killing time. So you dawdle as long as you can, and you end up getting to the winery for your 10 a.m. tasting at 9 a.m. Let's say
9:30.
no. Let's say a lot of people get 45 minutes to an hour early to a wine
That's
tasting.
insane.
Please don't. Especially like if your tastings like around like if you have a 1 o'clock tasting and you show up at like noon and you're like, yeah, I'll just like hang out.
We'll just meander.
Yeah, we'll hang out.
Please don't do that. Also, that's not a thing.
It's just
It's
doesn't
a
work.
thing. It's a thing some places. Okay, this is this conversation's almost a little tough to have because I don't want it to be so generalized to like all wineries, right? Every winery is different.
This is very applicable to most wineries.
It is.
Showing up early is fine. Like if you're 15 minutes early, great.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
In fact, I actually don't think that's a
15.
bad thing.
Yeah,
Like
no,
10 minutes, like
that's great.
right, because then yeah, you're maybe looking around for a few minutes, or you just have to hang out in your car for like a second. But
10-15 minutes is fantastic.
perfect. That's actually
45
fine.
minutes, like no. there's no you have to understand that wineries operate with just the right amount of people.
Yes. Yes, please know
We don't
that.
have just like extra people around.
Yeah,
Like
very unlikely.
because if there's a guest there, there has to be someone around the guest. You know, we can't just like leave guests just sitting by themselves on for an hour.
It's probably a
right?
liability in some
I
cases,
don't know,
actually.
but like
I don't
it's
know.
just it's you people at wineries. You know, we have lunch. Believe it or not, we eat food. We have breaks. It's great.
You guys, can I just say the number of days that I'll talk to him while he's at work and he's just like, I'm either getting no lunch or like I have 10 to 15 minutes to eat, maybe, because people decided to show up late, which we'll get to, or early. It's
just
it's so sad, you guys. Like they barely get to eat. That goes with restaurants too. Like
it's worse in restaurants.
just show up when your appointment is, if there is an appointment.
Yeah.
Like
just 10, 15 minutes early, great. Like if you show up for a 1 o'clock tasting at noon, like I'm going to be eating lunch and now I have to like kind of cut my lunch early so I can, take care of you because no one else is there.
they're people too, you guys.
You know, it's like you just kind of screw up the schedule, honestly. And it's not to say like, I'm not like, I don't know. It's hard to describe.
I know. It's like you don't want to be like, you're not like
mad
mad about it,
Yeah,
but you're
I'm
just
just
like, damn, I wish I was hoping to get like a proper break. Because basically, just picture that. Imagine the shoe being on the other foot, right? If
Yeah.
you're listening to this, how would you feel? And again, I want to call out restaurants, any hospitality position. This is beyond just wineries, but especially wineries, because I agree they don't always have the staffing to like help out with that. Imagine if that were you. And always, that's the thing about hospitality and the wine industry and everything. We all want to accommodate you. We are as excited as you are for you to be there, truly. But again, we're all people too. People that need to eat, people that are working 8-9 hour shifts, probably longer sometimes, actually, because typically with a lot of wineries, like they have to leave when the customers leave. And if customers are staying late or doing whatever, like that prevents you getting home at the right time too.
Yeah.
So it's just, if you
think that you're showing
on the
up,
other
people
end.
think that they're showing up like an hour early, 45 minutes early.
It's like
they're like, oh,
a
like
good
I'm doing
thing.
them a favor by showing up hella early.
Yeah.
But
I mean, look, maybe you are. Who
you're
knows?
not.
In some cases, but most likely
you're not. Because
You're-
I would, you could be like your host could be finishing up with another group. Your
Yeah.
host could be
Yeah.
like now going to lunch and now has to cut it early. Like there's all these little things that like if you showed up to a restaurant an hour early for your reservation, they'd be like, your table's not ready.
Right. Your
Go
table
away.
literally isn't ready. So you kind of think of wineries as the same thing.
Yeah.
Like,
it's like
wineries operate very similarly to restaurants, you guys. If everybody kind of like didn't know that, or anybody here wasn't like super clear on that, like generally speaking, they operate very similarly
yeah. It's like, I mean,
in some ways.
it's,
I mean,
you're going wine tasting. You're a doctor, right? You're going wine tasting. What if I showed up to my appointment an hour early and like demanding for,
or your dentist, right?
yeah,
like
like-
they're not going to take you before you're finishing up with another patient.
it just,
Like it's kind of the same
10, 15 minutes, great.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you might get lucky. Some wineries might take you early, and they might be perfectly happy to do that. But generally speaking, I would say
Yeah, I just say,
Not.
don't show up 40 minutes to an hour early. That's just,
Yeah. But also, I think you brought up a good point. Like, don't show up early thinking or assuming like, oh, we'll just walk around or we'll just do whatever. Like,
we'll have a glass of wine
Well,
and
yeah.
wait. A lot of wineries can't even give you a glass of wine
yeah,
because it's against
it's like not really.
permitting.
It's just like not really a thing. Or they might seem like they're okay with it. And listen, maybe they are. Again, I'm not trying to like put words in any wineries' mouths, but like, it is more, I don't know, like stressful on the winery and the people working there, you walking around doing your own thing, than
Yeah,
just show up
try
when
and
you're
time
supposed
it
to.
as best you can.
Yeah.
If you're gonna be an hour early, go somewhere
Or
else.
call.
Go, like, have a
That's
coffee.
another thing.
Go do something and come back closer to your reservation. It's
Yeah, just a little
it just
bit.
kind of throws off the whole day for people
Yeah.
when you show up that early.
Yeah. Or again, if there is a chance that you might show up early, or you want to just see like, wow, I wonder if they could take us early. calling and asking is always worth, and they might, you never know, they might be like, actually, sure, or maybe not, like, we can't get you in right now, but maybe like actually a half an hour instead of an hour when your original appointment was. Like, it depends on the day. But yeah, I mean, especially on weekends. And that's the thing I think that's interesting about like the wine industry. I will definitely speak specifically for like Sonoma and Napa here for a second. Like, there used to be kind of like slower seasons. I feel like those are getting shorter and shorter. Like, it's just always busy. Like, even in the winter, a lot of people are still coming in the winter. I mean, it is slower, but like, you know, summer, especially harvest time, especially spring when it's getting nice out. I mean, you know, it's just, yeah. So again, that's another point, just to come back to the reservation thing really quick, that it's like in your best interest to make that reservation. And like you were saying, to do it early, because things are, at least here, getting booked up.
I mean, everyone wants to go wine
crazy.
tasting Saturday, Sunday, like they'll book up
which makes complete sense. Yeah. And it depends on where you're going too. I mean, some more like mom and pop places or whatever, but I would imagine, I don't want to say everybody listening to this podcast, but like if you are coming here or it's your first time here or you only have so many days here or whatever, and like let's say you're looking for some like Insta-worthy places, or it's like places that you've seen on Instagram or TikTok or wherever.
That's a story for another time.
Yes, it is. But those are probably going to be pretty busy. You're going to have to make a reservation in advance, because those places are, whether warranted or not, probably popular for a reason. So people are going to be trying to get in there.
Showing up late.
Wait, hold on. What's worse, showing up early or showing up late? I have my opinion on this.
Showing up late.
Showing up late is
showing up
for
late.
sure worse. Yeah.
Like, I'm not talking 10 minutes late. That's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever. 15 minutes, whatever.
Shit happens.
I feel like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, hour late.
People legitimately show up that late.
People show up an hour late to appointments, and like, if you show
it's
up,
so disrespectful. I just can't even.
If you show up an hour late to a wine tasting experience, you have no right to ask for anything. Maybe the bathroom. Like,
everyone has a right to a bathroom and water, sure, but can you?
You know, let's say you have a 1 o'clock tasting. The tasting goes from 1 to 2:30. You show up at 2 o'clock for this 1.5 hour tasting, so you have 30 minutes. It's not like I can just give you the same experience now. I have an appointment at 3 o'clock now as well, so you get 30 minutes of my time. And that I'll do my best to like give you a great experience in that 30 minutes, you know, but it's like there's only so much I can do, and like you just can't expect to have the same experience that you would have if you showed up on time.
Can you give some context or like an example of
someone showing up? What do you mean?
I think you just hit an important point. People showing up and expecting the same experience or feeling entitled to the same experience.
Yeah, well, I mean, you pay, you know, this amount of money. Let's say the tasting is $150 tasting, right? And, you know, or $100 tasting, which a lot of tastings are $100 now.
I mean, there's plenty that aren't, but yeah, it has gotten really high, at least here.
Yeah. So let's say you pay, you know, $100 a person. There's 2 of you, and
this is like a pretty nice experience, right? Like maybe you'll get a tour. Maybe there's like something special or extra.
Yeah. So let's say it's $100 a person, and you know you're from 1 to 2:30, so you got 90 minutes, and you show up 60 minutes into this 90 minutes, so you have 30 minutes left. I mean, yeah, some you know, sometimes people are rude, you know, and it's like, hey, I paid for, you know, $100 and like I only get 30-minute tasting. It's like, I can only do so much. I have a tasting at 3 o'clock. You showed up an hour. We did all these preparations for you. We planned this amazing experience for you, and because of your poor planning, you didn't get to have this experience.
And now somehow this is your fault, or like the winery's fault.
Yeah, it's like
it's
we're being
someone else's fault other than yours.
We're not being accommodating, but it's like we had this everything like
we did our
perfect for you. Like we had this great experience set up for you.
Yeah.
And you, as the guest,
it's your responsibility to show up as close to on time as possible.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna be like a lot of wineries, like they won't like refund you either. Like if you're just like, it's the day of your tasting and you're, an hour early or an hour late and you're just like, oh, we shouldn't even go. Like you're not going to get a refund. So people, you show up for whatever you can get, but it's like, just know that it's going to be very heavily modified and it's going to be very, very different and shorter. You only get to taste a few wines versus, a larger selection. You just have to be aware of that. And it's not like we can pull someone out of the closet and be like, oh yeah, he'll take care of you for 90 minutes now. Like that person isn't there, Wineries are operating with basically their heads just above water with people. And so if you're going to be an hour late, like at least call. And when you call, don't be like, oh, it's going to be like 20 minutes. Just tell them the truth.
Don't fabricate, please. Don't be like, okay, 20 minutes, and then either not call to then update even more, or call and be like, oh, sorry, it's actually another 15. Oh, we're stuck in traffic.
Don't say you're on the way when you're like just getting the check at the restaurant. Like, don't do that. Just be honest.
Yeah.
Like, please.
They will try and do what they can. Like, that's the thing about any hospitality. Like, it's hospitality, right? Like, the goal is always to do what they can for you, for the guests. Like, we don't want anyone to have like a shitty experience. And we understand things happen. Traffic happens. Kids happen, right? Emergencies happen. And some things are on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I mean, if
like
there's like
100%.
a really crazy extenuating circumstance, of course, well,
some things,
we're not monsters.
Everyone will do what they can to like.
But yeah,
work
I mean,
around
if it's just like you went to lunch and your lunch went long, it's like there's really no excuse for that.
Yeah, or your previous tasting went long, and also like please understand, working in this industry, a lot of good bullshit smellers in this industry. So if people are like on the phone saying, oh, well, this XYZ happened or whatever, promise you, we have heard every excuse. We can sniff it out if it's real or not. Like, just don't. Like, just be honest about it. Like,
yeah, just be honest and call.
It's hilarious what people think they can get away with. Like, truly mind-blowing.
Yeah, I mean.
It's just, yeah. It's, again, with any of these like things that we're talking about, it's like, put yourself in their shoes. How would you feel if someone did this to you? Probably not very good, right? Like, yeah. So, again, it just depends. I mean, you might get really lucky and whoever they is can accommodate, but generally speaking, it's the reason I was asking you for context too is because I've definitely heard stories and experienced my own where people will come in. Here's the other thing too. Come in, they're already 45 minutes to an hour late and they are just moseying in. Yeah. There's no urgency. There's no like, oh, let's get there. We're already so late. We feel so bad. Like, let's try and get there.
More common than people hurrying up.
They
just take their sweet time.
They park. They take pictures and selfies and all the things for Instagram and Facebook.
Oh, gotta use the bathroom now. Like, you're already an hour late. Like, now you're gonna.
And I'm sure a lot of people are like, well, we're already an hour late. What's 10 more minutes? No, like, your stopwatch is already like stopped a while ago. So if that winery can then take you, you're lucky. Count your blessing, but don't be furthermore aloof or rude or just disrespectful on top of it. Yeah, I mean, like, again, it's just decency. Human decency, like, just respecting other people's time.
You're already super, super late. Like,
yeah, but that really frustrates me. I've experienced that, and I've just definitely heard stories from you.
That's all the time.
And people are just really...
Yeah, that's like
in their own heads. Probably
park their car and it takes them 10 minutes to get out of the car. Like, what are you doing in there?
Yeah,
I mean, you're all,
probably already drinking, right? So of course your judgment is going to be a little more impaired than if it wasn't already. Doesn't make it okay. That's not, it's not an excuse. Figure it out. Or get a driver. And drivers can, I mean, listen, drivers aren't perfect either, though. I mean, there's definitely drivers that we've come across that are kind of disrespectful and also don't really respect time, or they're going to, or
I mean, the driver
they'll
is
try
at
and
the mercy
hurry,
of the
but
guest too.
yeah,
It's
no,
like,
they are, because they're ultimately
they got to pick them up at 9 a.m., but the guest isn't ready to go until 9:15.
Yeah.
And then now you're going to be 15 minutes late to
for everything else. So. Yeah. Yeah. And I have to say, I mean, a good, decent like host at a winery or something will respect the fact that, like, if you're like, you'll probably hear a lot like, oh, where have you guys been, or where are you guys going? If you are telling that host like, oh, we have XYZ after, for me personally, and I feel like this for you too, like I would then be mindful, like, okay, what time do you guys have to get out of here? Or like, okay, do you have to be out by a certain time? And kind of like, oh yeah, between like, 2 and 2:15. I'd be like, okay, I will respect that, and I will do what I can to get you out of here. So it's
I'm
like
constantly judging.
There's a lot of
bad judging, not like judging in terms of like intoxication, like
oh,
stuff
that's
like
a
that.
whole nother.
So it's like you
that's
come
an
in,
episode.
and I'm like,
we can also
where are
sniff
you
that
from?
out very fast.
One is like all wineries, they'll always ask you where you're from, and that's just to like see if I have a connection with you or where you're from.
And out of curiosity. I mean, that is not, I would say for 99.9% of us, that is actually not for show. We are genuinely excited and curious.
Maybe
where are you
you're
from?
a place that I like been to and I like, and we can talk about.
Yeah,
it,
like it's super fun. It's a great icebreaker. Like it is what it is. Yeah.
Or then I ask, where have you been today? What wineries? And
also out of curiosity, and
if
just like
someone
it's
says,
fun.
"Oh, you're the only winery we have today," I'm like, "Great,
freaking awesome, love that answer."
Completely sober, and then it's like, if you're like, "Oh, this is our third stop," I'm like,
we're like,
shit, where have you been? And then they tell me the 3 places, and I'm like, or the 2 places. I mean, like, oh, okay,
or 3 or 4, yeah.
And so now I'm like, kind of looking at you like, how much wine have they had today? Should I not pour them as much? Like, people have to understand too. It's like, I'm not going to I can't over pour you.
Yeah, legally. We go through trainings.
Even if you have like a driver, like,
yeah,
I can't pour you too much wine. Like if you've been to, 2 wineries already and you've had, a bunch of wine, and you like, let's say you had lunch somewhere.
Oh my God,
like,
yes.
a bottle of wine at lunch. It's like,
this reminded me of a group that you had.
Yeah.
And they all got sick because they
like
they overdrank actually at lunch versus the tastings. Yeah. Yep.
So
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the hosts are constantly like probing to kind of get a feel of like where you're at in in the day, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Okay, I think that's all we have on that topic. Wanted to close this out by also mentioning showing up with either more guests or less guests than, like, let's say you make a reservation, right? You follow the rules, you do all the things, but you end up showing, right? You let's say you do all the other things right, but you show up with either more or less people than was planned.
More is worse. Less is easy. We can deal with less people.
I would agree
easier.
with that.
More, depending on how many more, could be problematic for some wineries.
Yeah.
Because there are all these things that we've set up, the tastings, the food pairings, all this kind of stuff.
If this is applicable to where you're going. So I will say, sorry, just to jump in really quick. Again, this is very, very general, you guys. There are some places that can take this on easier than others. Or if you're just like doing, it's not like some full crazy flight, or it's like, it's easy enough to just like add or remove a place setting or something like that. Sure, it might not be that big of a deal. But there are wineries out there, you definitely have experience with this, where perhaps there's even a chef that like preps everything, or, they take into account your food allergies, and that, there's so much planning and thought and consideration behind your experience. And then people have the audacity to be like, oh, sorry, we had 8, but there's actually only 5 of us. And then 2 of them are actually 2-year-olds. So then it's like,
no, don't get me started on children.
And we have one. We can say this. Okay.
Yeah. But like, anyway. So yeah, I mean, if you just call, if you're going to have more or less guests, just call and let the winery know. Because
yeah. That's not a bad thing. That, again, understand that stuff happens for sure. Or people people get sick, and I actually at first meant like have a cold or like something happens, or people just like cannot hang and like can't drink anymore wine. That actually probably happens more often than like people being like legitimately sick.
Oh yeah, I've had groups of like people, and they're like, I'm like, oh, is it only 7? Like, oh yeah, the other person is napping in the van.
They're dry heaving over there, like
passed out in the van, basically. Got it. Cool.
Yes, that does happen. It's all, I think like the overarching theme of this conversation and like just going to these wineries and these businesses or these restaurants or whatever is just communication, right? Like,
yeah, just let
respect,
us know. Let
communication.
The winery know. More guests, less guests. All kind. Just the more info, the better.
Yeah.
Just because it makes it smoother, and it's just super. It's just very disrespectful if you have a reservation for 4 and you're like, oh, you get there and you're like, oh, we have 6.
It's actually 6.
Hope that's okay.
Also, what if they don't have it? Like, think about the logistics. What if they don't have a table for you? What if they literally don't have a space for these other? And I get this all the time. There was a place I worked at where I got this. They were like, oh, well, they're not going to taste. Don't worry. Or, oh, they can just pull up a chair from over here, whatever. No, you don't. You don't work at that winery. You don't get to say that. You don't get to be like, oh, hey, can we just borrow that chair over there real quick? No. Like, the winery will tell you what they can and cannot accommodate. And generally speaking, like, I understand if like people don't drink or they're more just a little along for the ride. Like, okay, fine. But then communicate that too. And oftentimes, like when you're booking, you can say ahead of time, like, okay, 4 of us are drinking, 2 are not. Like, and then again, the winery can then accommodate for those people, make sure they have water, make sure they have something else, or
it's not like we're not saying no to be assholes.
Yeah, absolutely not.
It's not like that. It's like, the policies and, the way that wineries do things are to benefit all the guests.
It's
right?
the guests.
It's
really
to
is.
Preserve the experience for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you start, allowing these weird little, one-off things here and
chaos.
There, it just starts to diminish the experience for other people that are having an experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so
yeah,
that is why sometimes wineries seem like, wow, they're like super staunch on like this one. Like, what do you mean we can't have one extra guest? It's, it's just the policies are for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's not like wineries are saying no to you.
Being assholes to be assholes. No,
it's not what it is.
Yeah.
There's these policies, the table size, how many chairs can fit in the room, all these little things.
If you want to get nitty gritty, it could be down to like fire safety. How many people could be
how many people
allowed
be in the building at once?
Or like seriously, I mean, really, like if you get nitty gritty with it, and
food bites the chef prepared.
Yeah,
you showed up with more people. We don't have enough food bites for people. Extra.
That's not a good look.
There's planning before you arrive, and so
it's all for you.
It
really is. And I think like the overarching, we can kind of finish this conversation up with these sort of final thoughts, is like, what's such a bummer that I see at the end of the day is like people will poorly plan. They will not make a reservation. They'll show up early or they'll show up late, or they'll show up with more or less people. They do all of these things, whether out of good or bad intention, whatever. But then wineries will sometimes like get a call and a complaint, or someone will leave a bad review, or something will happen, and it's like the winery now has like a bad review or a bad rep about that, when it was like the guests, I don't want to say it was like the guest's fault, but it was kind of like on the guests. It's like the winery did their part. They did everything they could, like you said, to kind of like preserve the experience and make it as awesome for you as possible. Yet because sort of like the guest's fault, like that sort of suffered, and then they have the audacity to complain about it. It's like, what?
People are just,
I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. It's just, it's interesting. It's interesting being in this industry and seeing things.
People just want what they want.
Yeah. And
which I get.
Yeah.
I do too, but
yeah. At the end of the day, I don't care what state you're in, whether you're going beer tasting, wine tasting, to a restaurant, scotch tasting, whatever establishment you're going to that has some hospitality aspect to it where there is either, it can be like the most basic, minimal, but lovely experience to like something that's like a $200-$300 full-on tasting wine, food, pairing, tour experience, whatever. Wherever a winery falls on that scale, they genuinely want to welcome you and make sure you have the best possible experience. Nobody is like, it's like you said, like any policies or any things that we're throwing out there today, it's not to be difficult. It's really just to make sure things are running on the right timing and for a plethora of reasons. And it is ultimately to make sure that you have like the best time there possible. So it's like, wouldn't you want to like do whatever you can to make sure you're having the best time possible too? And so you're not arriving like stressed out or too drunk or, you know, whatever the circumstances are. And again, shit happens. We get that. Wineries get that, like, for sure. Yeah. But like I said, I think that just that communication aspect, just being respectful, human dignity, do unto others as you would want done unto you. You know what I mean?
Talk.
Yeah. Exactly. So.
Wrapping it up, make a reservation, show up on time with the appropriate amount of guests, please.
It's very simple, you guys. It's just 3 things. Like,
if you can do those
rule.
3 things, like,
oh, you're gonna have such a good time.
For success,
you're gonna have such a good time. Yeah, and don't overload on wineries. We're gonna come back to that point for sure. Yeah, and tell you some horror stories about that. But yeah, thanks in advance. Everyone appreciates it. Yes. You will appreciate it too. I think we speak on most, if not all, of the people working in the wine industry with this conversation. But I digress. Anyway, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. If you found this helpful, please share it. If you or anyone you know is going to go wine tasting or anywhere anytime soon, I think these are very important points to share. But appreciate you guys being here, and we will see you in the next episode.
Yeah, cheers, you guys.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us and tuning into the Taste, Toast, Travel podcast. We really appreciate you being here and hope you're enjoying these honest conversations about all things sipping, savoring, and seeing the world. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, we would truly appreciate a rating or review on whatever platform you're tuning in on, so fellow foodies, Epicureans, and travel enthusiasts can enjoy this content too. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a follow at Taste, Toast, Travel. We'll see you in the next episode.